Good morning.
Morning.
My first ever short meditations were at 5 a.m. in rural Honduras, so this feels familiar. It's good to be here with all of you. Our meditation comes from John chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. John chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." When the great crowd of the Jews learned that he was there, they came not only because Jesus was there, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on account of him that many of the Jews were deserting and were believing in Jesus. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I'm not sure if this passage is meant to be funny, but it has a sort of dark irony, especially at the end. The entire last chapter, a significant part of the Gospel of John, gave the narrative of Lazarus being raised from the dead by Jesus. This miracle that honestly, probably many of us in the room today would give anything for a loved one to be with us again. And the strange and almost humorous part of the end of this text is that the chief priests come up to Jesus. And it turns out they want to send Lazarus to the grave again. They want to return him to where he came from, having witnessed this incredible miracle, this gift of unexpected, miraculous life. Their response was to say, "We don't want any of that." Should probably check the... Okay.
Up here.
A rousing start. John 12, the very end. Talking about the almost humorous response of the chief priests coming up and seeing this incredible miracle, and then saying immediately, we don't actually want that. In fact, it makes some sense for the chief priests. Resurrection of Lazarus was pretty inconvenient. It meant that the power balance that they were in many ways tasked with maintaining was going to be thrown off. That if too many of the people in their charge began to side with Jesus, the entire empire, or at least their mini empire, might begin to crumble. And so resurrection was inconvenient. Noah's analogy yesterday means that resurrection, when he was talking about grocery items being slightly out of place, resurrection means that the butter might be in a different aisle. That could be frustrating. Resurrection means things can look different. There's a window of hope that presses on us. I think about one of my favorite texts in Scripture, which is from Psalm 126, which says, "When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. One of the marks of the people of God coming back from Babylon, back from captivity, was that it wasn't that they were just liberated and saved, it was that they had the capacity to dream, to hope, to imagine. And I think that capacity often gets crushed and defeated. So the question we get to sit with today is what resurrection life are we trying to put back into the tomb? What resurrection life is too inconvenient, too puzzling, too baffling, too stifled by the weight of our hurt, our pain, our incredulity this morning? What are your hopeful imaginations about what Ann Arbor CRC, about Washtenaw County, about Detroit? What are those resurrection hopes that you're holding on to this election year? Maybe with your own family, your friends. Esau McCaulley, theologian and author of Reading While Black, he invites us into this wrestle. And so I want to read his words for us this morning and then pose two simple reflection questions for our time of meditation. Esau McCaulley says, we know what to do with grief and despair. We have a place for it. We have rituals that surround it. I know how to look around at the anti-Black racism, the anti-Asian racism, the struggles of families at the border, and feel despair. I know what it's like to watch the body count rise after a mass shooting. I know how to feel when I look to some in the church for help, only to have my faith questioned. I put it all in the tomb that contains my dead hopes and my dead dreams for what the church and this country could be. I am left with only tears. Hope is much harder to come by. The women did not go to the tomb looking for hope, Macaulay says. They were searching for a place to grieve. They wanted to be left alone in despair. The terrifying prospect of Easter is that God called these women to return to the same world that crucified Jesus with a very dangerous gift. Hope in the power of God, the unending reservoir of forgiveness, and an abundance of love. It would make them seem like fools. Who could believe such a thing? We'll sit with two questions that prompt us to think about our own hope and our own imagination. But before we get to those, just one thing to add. Who could believe such a thing? Martha did. We read in this passage, this expensive perfume, her hair. Martha put everything on the line. She sacrificed her dignity. To wash Jesus' feet with her hair was an act of promiscuity. It affected her reputation, and yet she did it. And the amount of money that perfume cost was about $50,000. So as we sit with the hard reality of our world, of our pains, we also sit with that incredible hope that Martha modeled for us. What resurrection hope did you have for your family, for your friends, our country, your faith, our church, that feels crushed for you? Or what dreams did you have 10 years ago, or even 1 year ago, that haven't materialized? You can sit with that question for about 2 minutes. And then what resurrection hope, what would it look like for you? For one of those dreams, or what new life can be born out of these crushed dreams? What might Jesus be saying through Martha as your life? We'll take about 4 or 5 minutes of reflection time